Why should teachers use self-assessment in their classrooms? That's the question I'm going to attempt to answer over the course of this video. The best way for me to answer this question is to tell you about my dream classroom. In my dream classroom, I put on a YouTube video that demonstrates whatever phenomenon we'll be learning that day, and then have my students go off into groups and independently research said phenomenon for about 45 minutes, at the end of which time they'll come back together and present an explanation for what they witnessed. Explanations that, in my dream classroom, are both of a high quality and combine to provide a complete account of the phenomenon. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm absolutely insane if I think I will ever have a class capable of learning in this way, and you're probably right. But let's play the hypothetical game for a couple seconds. Hypothetically speaking, if you wanted to train a class to engage in this sort of independent learning, you'd have to start by having them regularly practice self-assessment. Why? Because good independent learning requires complex cognitive activities like deliberate planning when deciding how to tackle a problem, the ability to accurately assess comprehension, the ability to accurately evaluate progress towards an end goal, as well as the ability to accurately assess the quality of one's work. In other words, good independent learning requires good metacognition and self-assessment, which can be defined as 1. Monitoring and evaluating the quality of one's thinking and behavior when learning, and 2. Identifying strategies that improve one's understanding and skills helps develop the metacognitive skills. Thus, self-assessment isn't just the key to my dream classroom, but is also a tool that can, and I quote, promote intrinsic motivation, internally controlled effort, a mastery goal orientation, and more meaningful learning. Its powerful impact on students' performance in both classroom assessments and large-scale accountability assessments empowers students to guide their own learning and internalize the criteria for judging success. So we know why self-assessment is a good thing. The only question is, how can we effectively use it? Lucky for us, James H. McMillan and Jessica Hearn, who are advocates for the use of self-assessment in classrooms, have laid out the 3 considerations or steps that are necessary for effective self-assessment to occur. The first is clear criteria. Students should understand what is expected of them so they can judge their work accordingly. This can be done by providing students with a marking rubric, by putting lesson criteria up on the board, and by providing students with an exemplar so they have a concrete understanding of what good work looks like. It's important to stick to the criteria you choose. Let's pretend the criteria for an assignment is that students will draw a picture using 5 different colors. If this is the criteria, it's what students should be assessed on, not their spelling, not the straightness of their lines. Because sharing lesson criteria with students is a relatively new trend, at least in North America, teachers can help their students navigate criteria by using the 3 big questions. What is my job? How can I do my job? And how will I know when I'm done? The utilization of these 3 questions constitutes a pseudo-self-assessment that also guides students towards mastery. The second consideration is self-reflection. Once students understand the criteria, they must be given the opportunity to evaluate their performance and then make changes to their work as necessary. This is a process that can be modeled by the teacher by critically assessing the quality of their own work. It is also an opportunity for teachers to stress mastery. Mastery is controllable, and the goal of mastery is knowledge comprehension, not task completion, and this emphasis will help push students towards greater achievement by empowering them to captain their learning. It is also important that students are given time to change their work. It is this component of the process that allows students to adjust and improve their learning strategies by not simply focusing on what was wrong, but by allowing students to apply new and perhaps more effective approaches. Reflection is the last component of effective self-assessment. Reflection encourages students to think about what they've learned while allowing them to identify areas that are still confusing and set new goals. This process encourages deeper understanding as opposed to surface knowledge. Don't worry if the self-assessment process still seems overly complicated. Rolheiser did us all a favor and broke the process down to 4 manageable steps. Step 1, have students establish criteria. Step 2, show the students how to apply said criteria in order to evaluate sample work. Step 3, provide the students feedback on how they did during Step 2. And Step 4, have the students brainstorm new learning goals and strategies that will help them achieve said goals. All of which to say the reason for using self-assessment in your classroom is blatant. Self-assessment makes better students. Furthermore, its application is relatively simple given how profound an impact it has. But there are other factors teachers must take into consideration prior to introducing self-assessment into their classrooms. Namely, to what degree does a student's self-assessment impact their grade? Should the student's assessment be taken into consideration? Should the skill with which they self-assess be taken into consideration? Or does the independent learning process that self-assessment promotes render traditional grade structures irrelevant?